Sonic characters and humans in the same world have always been kinda weird when you think about it. I mean, sometimes they're just there, and other times it's like Eggman is the only human in existence, like some freakish ape titan thing compared with the rest of the cast. Well, the current running explanation for this is that the games with humans in the background and without take place on two different planets, sort of separating the classic games from the Adventure series and Unleashed, and kind of making Boom, Colors, and Forces all connected with each other. Even though the two forms of Sonic there are completely separate incarnations, but for the most part it gets the job done. It even explains things like why there was no gun around to save the world while Robotnik was doing his whole conquest thing in Forces, even though Shadow and Omega still existed then, so yeah, no, the Sonic lore is definitely a complete mess. But what if I told you there was one human character that defied the rules in both worlds, and somehow transformed from a human into a Mobian? Welcome back to the Many Myths of Gaming, where today we'll be taking a look at the bizarre story behind one of Sonic's more niche characters with a pretty large cult following, and one of my personal favorites, Honey the Cat, whose very existence just so happens to completely break the Sonic continuity. So before we talk about anything else, just who and what is Honey the Cat in the Sonic games? Honey originally comes from Sonic the Fighters as a scrapped character whose data was left in the game. Her moveset was based on Knuckles, and her character model seems to have been based on Amy, given that if you tried to mod her back into the game, occasionally she would glitch back into her if she got hit sometimes. But other than that and a few other bugs, she was pretty much a near completed character that was left out of the final game for one reason or another. But then, everything changed in 2012, when Sonic the Fighters was re-released for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and she was officially included as a secret character, unlocked by the now insanely difficult method of pressing the start button on Amy's picture. And from there, that's pretty much the only official appearance she's ever had in the game. But somehow, due to how popular she got, she was later included in Sonic Archie comics as a semi-major character, where her design was slightly reworked to help bring her up to date with the rest of the cast, and there were even, quote, long-term plans for her prior to the comic's cancellation. In Sonic the Fighter, she was a fashion designer who was for some reason designated as a guardian for one of the Chaos Emeralds. I have no idea why, she just was. And in the game's canon, her power scaling is just even more confusing, because for literally no reason, Honey the Cat is freaking OP. She's described as on the same level to fight with both Sonic and Knuckles. She can jump several meters into the air, kick her opponents while doing so, run along walls, move so fast to strike an opponent that she basically teleports behind them. She has wings on the back of her dress that let her glide like Knuckles. Her dress is also a full suit of armor clad in iron spikes, and on top of that, she has the potential to use Chaos Energy, which means she also has a hyper form as well. What? Oh yeah, and to make things even better, in the comics she also decides to learn martial arts just because she got bored one day, and with this she learned the Sonic equivalent of Shadow Clone Jutsu and moved so fast that she made multiple copies of herself to beat Tails in a fight in the Sonic Tournament arc, I swear I am not making this up, and later only loses to Sonic out of a surrender just because she felt like it. Sonic entered the tournament to win the Chaos Emeralds and save the world. This smug motherfucker entered to promote her merch, so I reiterate, what? Anyways, that should give you a good idea of what this thing is, but power scaling and the fact that she can quite literally just show up out of nowhere aside, there's also a very specific reason as to why this character completely defies the rules of the two-world Sonic canon, and it all has to do with a little-known fighting game called Fighting Vipers. Fighting Vipers was developed by Sega AM2 for arcades using the engine for Virtua Fighter 2, later released for the Sega Saturn and even later Xbox Live and PSN like Sonic the Fighters. It was pretty similar to its engine's predecessor, except it featured a closed arena and a new armor mechanic. Oh yeah, it also had Pepsi Man, he's here too. But aside from that, it was basically just a pretty standard fighting game as you can imagine. The thing is, among the original cast of characters from Fighting Vipers, there's someone that looks a little familiar. Couldn't tell ya who, but if I had to take a guess... That's right, it turns out Honey is a human fighter in Fighting Vipers, who has the exact same name and design as her Sonic counterpart. There's no doubt about it, this character is definitely the basis for the version we see in Sonic, and it makes even more sense when you realize that Sonic the Fighters was initially built from Fighting Vipers by just replacing the game's cast with Sonic characters instead. The Honey in Fighting Vipers uses the same poses and look as Honey the Cat, and she even has a special attack called Cat Punch in her moveset, as well as many of her other moves also having cat-based names. These cat themes might have been what inspired Sega to make Honey the Cat in Sonic the Fighters a cat in the first place. On top of everything else, according to the game's description of her, she's quote, a girl who dreams of becoming an apparel designer. When she dresses in her self-made rubber dress armor, she becomes a radical Viper. Even the Viper Hunt is an opportunity to show off her dress and herself, which is the exact same as Honey the Cat and her motivations in Sonic the Fighters and even the Sonic Archie comics so many years later. The interesting thing is though, at the time of her original game's creation, her design was noted as being one of the more risque of Sega's creations up to that point. Call her the Mai Shiranui of fighting Vipers if you will. You know, probably wouldn't be allowed in Smash for two pretty big reasons. So as to why Sega would have even considered basing a Sonic character off of her in the first place was completely out of the blue. Nevertheless though, that is clearly Honey just sitting there in the Sonic universe, as a Mobian when she was clearly a human being one game prior. Now, of course you could say, the games take place in two different universes, so obviously in one of them she can be a human, while in the other one she can be a Mobian like Sonic. But the only problem is, Honey went missing in her original game. In the American and European releases, she was renamed to Candy, which stuck with the American audience going forward, and because of this change, as an Easter egg, in the international versions of the game, graffiti can be found with the text, "In memory of Honey, you will always be remembered by your family and friends. RIP." Now, obviously she's still very much alive and in the game as Candy, and the graffiti was likely there just to make fun of her name change in America and Europe, but what if there was another meaning behind it? What if the Honey from fighting Vipers just so happened to make her way into the Sonic universe, appearing as if she vanished without a trace from her own world, only to be replaced by Candy? Whatever you make of it, whether it be alternate dimensions, the fighter just transforming into a cat for some reason, or something completely different, there's no doubt that Honey the Cat is the first ever, and arguably one of the only Mobian Sonic characters to have ever been a human at some point, making her a pretty big anomaly in the series, besides her absolutely busted power scaling. But it doesn't change the fact that Honey the Cat is one of the most interesting Sonic characters overall, having come from a fighting game and from that one appearance alone having such an insane fan response that she was brought back as a major character so many years later. Since the Archie comics ended and the IDW universe seems to be a little more based around the games and forces continuity, it's unknown whether or not we'll ever see a return in that form. But with older obscure characters that were also in Sonic the Fighters like Fang, Bean, and Bark all reappearing in Mania, as well as Mighty and Ray appearing even later, it seems like pretty much any Sonic character has the chance to make a full return given the opportunity. And because of this insanely overpowered cat's popularity, I have no doubts that this definitely isn't the last we've seen of her. This has been the Mini Moose of Gaming, thanks for watching.